February 24th, 1959. I turned 65 years old today. So I have a favor to ask of you on my birthday. Please listen to this whole message. It's part of the David and Goliath series that I'm doing on YouTube, but I'm also posting this on Facebook. I feel a burning in my heart to share with my friends. It's been so much fun to connect with past relationships literally over the last 50 years. I'm reaching out to people and having conversations and hearing about their journeys, and boy, it's been fun. So if I've already talked to you, man, thanks. It's just been really, really neat. I guess I'm a bit reflective now, turning 65, but I really appreciate the relationships. I haven't had a conversation with you yet. I'd love to. We're all busy. We'll get it done. So again, thanks. The David and Goliath series on YouTube. Here's another edition. So David, a young shepherd boy, walks into a camp with hundreds of soldiers and a king that's under a cloud of oppression and fear. And he defeated the Goliaths. It's an iconic biblical story that is used as an analogy over and over again as the little guy taking on the big guy. That's where we find ourselves now in this culture, in this day of America. How can the Davids defeat the Goliaths? And we've gone through quite a few different points. I want to emphasize David's image. He didn't have a self-image. Self-image is really, when you think about it, it's idol worship. Okay? Idol, image, kind of the same thing. In other words, I have to look and feel good about myself. I have to dress like everybody else. I have to do what everybody else is doing because there's a fear of man attached to it. That's what the whole army was doing. They all had the armor. They had the same armor. They dressed all the same. They did all the same. The king did all the same and looked the same, acted the same. All while every single one of them were afraid to speak up and face the Goliath, except David. David walks into that camp with a different heart and a different attitude, and instead of a self-image, he just knew his true identity. So when he convinced Saul that he had a chance of killing Goliath, Saul tried to put his armor on. In other words, the normal, the expected, what everybody else was doing. Maybe David could do it a little better or whatever. David put on Saul's armor. He felt the pressure of fear of man and look and be like everybody else. But he said, no, I can't go in these. And so he dressed as a shepherd boy with his stick and his slingshot. Looked totally different than everybody else in that camp as he walked out to Goliath. Even Goliath was shocked at his appearance. Saying, really? Really? You? Yeah, me. I'm dressed as a shepherd boy. I don't have all that armor on. I don't have that coat of mail, the bronze helmet, none of that. Not the big sword. And in fact, Goliath, I'm going to use your sword to cut your head off. And so his image wasn't about, like, I got to blend in, feel good about myself, and kind of go with the flow and go with the crowd. No, he went against the grain because he knew his true identity. And that's what I'm appealing to you today. Do you know your true identity, and do you walk in it? You see, normal and accepted at that camp and in that day was compromise and complicity and oppression under the threats of Goliath. When COVID hit, that's what happened to us. Goliath's threats. You're going to conform. We're going to keep you afraid. And even the leadership, represented by King Saul in my analogy, went along with it. They were afraid. They all did the same thing except for David. He dressed as a shepherd boy, said, no, no, no. Now that COVID, on the other side of COVID, I think it's a fair question to ask now that we know much more of the truth about the vaccines, about social distances, about shutting down and all that. Now that we know facts of the millions of people that the vaccine has killed. Now that we know so much more than we knew back then, I think it's a fair question to ask. Would you have gotten, if you did get the vaccine, would you do it again? No, if you knew then what you know now. I think it's a fair question. Pastors, churches, if you knew then what you know now, science, true science, would you have shut down your church? Would you have gone along like Saul and all the soldiers did, or would you have been more of a David? That's the question to ask. And if you don't even want to ask that question, then you're so filled with the fear of man that you've lost your rationality in this day and age. Please don't. Please don't. Be willing as an individual or as a leader to ask that question. Knowing now, if I knew then what I know now, would I have acted differently? And maybe not. Maybe you would have had to take the vaccine and do things because of a job or a situation or a family member. That's not the point. The point is millions of people just went along with the crowd and didn't think about it. They didn't have their own identity. They had the man-pleasing, fit-in mentality. So let me tell you a story. My Guilford classmates, maybe you'll remember this from 50 years ago, or almost 50 years ago, is we had what was called Spirit Week. And this was long before the days, lest you question this at all, long before the days of transvestism or whatever it is, cross-dressing and all that. Okay, throw that away. But here's my story. We were having Spirit Week at our high school. And it came around, I think it was Thursday, the second to last day of Spirit Week. You did something different every day, dressed in blue, so on and so forth. But this was switch day. The girls were to come to school dressed like guys, and the guys were to come to the school dressed like girls. Okay, it was Spirit Week. So I had my sister help me. I put on a wig, I wore a skirt, bought 44 double Ds and packed them big, and makeup, the whole 9 yards. I was dressed to the hilt and I went to school. It was one of the funnest days of my life. I walked into school, no one recognized me. I went up to my pals, buddies, football players, wrestlers. I would rub up against them and flirt, and they'd freak out because they didn't know who I was or what was going on. It was so much fun through the day. And as the day went on, it became very obvious. I was the only, now many girls dressed as guys, okay, but I was school of 2000, I was the only guy that dressed up like a girl that day. The only one in the whole school, 2,000 students. And I had a blast. So it comes to the last hour of the day. And I was being picked on unmercifully, absolutely loving every second of it. So we were sitting in English class. I think my English teacher felt sorry for me. And as they were harassing me and so on and so forth, and she didn't know I was enjoying it. And so she stood up and said, "Hey, sit down. I want to tell you all something. See that guy?" Pointing to me, dressed as a woman, pointing to me, and said, "This man is the only one in this school that's secure enough in his masculinity to do this today." And oh, did they shut up and become quiet. It's one of the best compliments I've ever gotten in my life. Okay? So now, please, those that cross-dress today that are confused with their identity, they have spiritual and mental illnesses and they just need help, okay? Flat out. That's the truth. This whole series, I'm trying to express the truth in love. I say that very lovingly. And so it wasn't anything like that. But my identity was secure. I knew who I was. Do you know who you are? If you didn't pass the dress rehearsal of COVID-1, and all that happened there, if you didn't pass that test well, ask the questions now. So when the next test comes, it's going to be bigger, it's going to be harder. How will you operate? Will you operate out of your true identity and think and pray and realize, you know what, if I just go along with the crowd, that might be the very wrong thing to do, just like all of David's brothers in the army and King Saul, regardless of what leadership everybody else is doing. Are you going to be a David, side with David's, work with David's, or are you just going to go along with the crowd again? I think it's a fair question to ask now before what's coming comes. Okay, ask yourself that. So that's my 65th birthday request for you. Just ask yourself, how did I do? How did my church do? How did my church leaders do? How did my family do? What did I learn from that so I can do better with what's coming in the days ahead? And it's my 65th birthday. As you can tell, I can handle rejection really well. Just make a comment. Say, "Curt, you're right on." Or say, "Curt, you're absolutely crazy in your old age." Or anything in between. If you want to comment on this, I would just have a lot of fun. Even if it's just "Happy birthday, you're weird." Okay? So God bless. I wanted to get this message out on my 65th birthday to all my friends and associates over the past 50 years, having a lot of fun doing this in this day and age. And so, yeah, thanks for your time.